So yeah. Hi, Glenn. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
And this recording will be played on our event for sexual violence. What has changed from Montreal Massacre till now? So, what has changed in Canada? And we would love to hear your thoughts in terms of your daughter, Rehtaeh Parsons, and how you have been advocating about her and the publication ban on her name.
Sure. Um, for my daughter, Rehtaeh Parsons, I would like to stand here now and be able to go how advanced Canada is when it comes to sex crimes against women. I would love to be able to do something like that, but I can't. My daughter, Rehtaeh, took her own life because she was sexually assaulted, because she was victim blamed and she was shamed and she was shunned. She was bullied and tormented, and she was literally terrorized to death over something that she doesn't even really remember happening to her. Uh, for being in Canada, it always seems like you think that our country's advanced. We have advanced laws that we've stood up for victims of violence. But and as a man, I've never really understood it. I've never really experienced it before. When it happened to my daughter, it was just unbelievable how terrible it actually really truly is. Rehtaeh's case, she did the right thing. She went forward. She went to the police. She did it on her own belief that she would find justice, and I understand why people don't. I especially today understand why people choose not to go to the police. But she did. She wanted to do that. She wanted to hold them accountable for what they did to her. And at the end of the day, the police never took her seriously. They never really investigated her case. They spent more time investigating her than they did anybody else. And when she found out that they were dropping the case for lack of evidence, she sent me a text messages, and she was so mad and so upset. And her own words were that they don't have any evidence because they didn't bother to get any evidence. It was extremely upsetting for me to hear that from her. She lost faith completely in the justice system. Now today, I've lost faith in the justice system. It seems to be self-serving. There's a publication ban on right now, and who is served by that publication ban? They're erasing her name from this story, and to me, that's disgusting. I am horrified by it because Rehtaeh's name should be a part of her story.
And we are very appalled by it too. What do you think? What kind of precedent is the government of Nova Scotia setting in case of banning her name and then banning her story as a consequence? What kind of justice are they serving?
Well, the publication ban to me, they issued it, we appealed it, we put letters into the judge to say, don't do this, it's not our wishes. We pled with them when Rehtaeh was alive for a year, more than a year, to do something to help her, to protect her. They did nothing. We asked them only to enforce the law. They did nothing. Now it's very apparent that the law was being broken in her case, and they didn't enforce it at all. And a year after Rehtaeh died, almost to the day, someone stands up in Nova Scotia and says, this is the law, we're going to enforce it to protect this girl. And to me, that's disgusting. I tweeted a picture the day that happened. I tweeted a picture of my daughter's gravestone. Just to say, though, now you're going to protect her. I'm sorry, you have no right to protect her at all. And Nova Scotia's like, well, we don't want to lift the ban. We don't want to set some kind of a precedent. Precedent's been set in this case. It's been set, and it's not in a good way. The precedent is that victims can be silenced, victims can be shamed, victims can not be believed. Victims will never be taken seriously in Nova Scotia. And doing something like this only reinforces the idea that sexual assault is a huge problem, and the government would rather just cover it up and quietly hope it goes away than do something to effectively address it.
What do you think us as Canadians can do to support you and to support the legacy of Rehtaeh?
If someone's going to support the legacy of Rehtaeh and honor her name, I would ask every single person, to have a safe environment so victims feel that they will be believed. That, I think, is the most important thing, and I believe a lot of victims say they won't come forward because they have a fear of not being believed. In Rehtaeh's case, there was a photograph, there was an admission, there was confessions, there was all this digital trail of who did what. They had it on a silver platter, the police literally did, and in a case like that, there was no charges. So if someone wants to come forward and they're thinking, I don't have any of that, what are their chances to get justice? And that's a part of not believing. I believe the police, when Rehtaeh's case first came forward, that there was just a lack of belief, a lack of justice in their minds, and they dropped the ball on it. So they are setting precedents in Nova Scotia, and they are ugly precedents. And if people want to do something about this case, I would just encourage them, always start by believing a victim of sexual violence. I will tell you now, they are always telling the truth.
There is another report where it says that like men or male police officers, when they are investigating cases of sexual assault, they do not do it as properly as female police officers. Do you think that like if there are more women police officers in police force in Nova Scotia, would that have made a difference?
I don't think it would make a difference between men and female police officers. I don't. I wish I could say it does, because you'd think that women have more experience with something like this. But the main investigating officer in Ratea's case was a female RCMP officer.
Okay.
In the first instance, right?
Yeah.
And I think, though, that it was a culture.
Yeah.
The police don't really have, I think, a gender approach to sexual violence. They have a cultural approach to it, which is the cultural approach to it Canada has, which is obvious. You know, victims, they're just not believed. John Gomeshi, he came forward, you know, and he said all stuff. Then there's three people said almost the exact same thing, and still you had politicians in our parliament standing up saying, you know, stand tall, Juan, and he's a wonderful man, and they weren't believing these victims. It took 10 people before all of a sudden someone said, well, let's connect the dots here. You know, chances are, why did it take 10? Chances are, I mean, the first three obviously were telling the truth. Well, why did it take 10?
Not even three. The first one was like telling the truth.
I know, and it was like a jilted girlfriend, and people bought that. They bought that crap hook, line, and sinker, and that's disgusting. And it turns out that the first one was telling the truth too. But it took 10 more before the whole story changed, and that's shameful. Canada should be ashamed of herself sometimes when it comes to sexual violence. The event is for Montreal Massacre, so what kind of message would you want to give in terms of like, what do you think has changed in 25, 30 years from then till now, where a man went and killed a bunch of women because they were women? You know,
because it is still gender-based violence and sexual violence.
It is. And last December, you know, I lit a candle in a church in Halifax in my daughter's memory. I hope to God no one else ever has to do something like that, but it's going to happen again and again and again. What's happened? What's changed in Canada since the Montreal Massacre? Obviously, very little. It's the way men view women, and it's sickeningly disgusting. Even men who stand up for women become targets. I stood up for my daughter, and I had men coming up and going after me and threatening me and ridiculing me, tormenting me online. You can't even stand up for women as a man in Canada. That's the state we're in. It's disgusting. It sickens me to death. It does.
What do you say about those people who try to fight the good fight, quote unquote, the good fight, all the way? They say that like, oh, men in developing countries like India and Pakistan, they have a misogynist problem, but like Canada doesn't. What do you say about that?
Canada has a misogynist problem. It absolutely does. I would hate to have people find that out the hard way, but the reality is there are a lot of people in Canada who have found that out the hard way. We have nothing to point fingers at, not in our country, not in the state we're in right now, with 0.3 conviction rate for sexual violence against women, 0.3. To me, that is disgusting. That is something you would think would come out of a third world country, and it doesn't. It's right here in Canada, right here in our country that we always claim to be so very proud of. There are a lot of people in this country, I am sure, that they would shake their head at the idea that we should have a lot to be proud of for how we treat our women, because we absolutely don't. The statistics back that up too. They back that up entirely. 1 in 3 women will face some kind of sexual violence in their life. If we were a developed country and we were a cultured country and a civilized country, those statistics should be 0.3% women would face sexual violence, rather than 0.3% of rapists would actually be held accountable for it.
From this point onwards, what do you plan to do? Do you plan to just go forward and advocate for Ratea and other survivors?
Yeah, I will never be silent. I can't. I can't imagine doing that. I think I'd be ashamed of myself if I did anything less. My plan is to keep speaking up for my daughter, keep trying to keep her name a part of the conversation, and keep speaking up for women, Absolutely, and definitely try to encourage men, all men, to always try to set an example that they would be proud of, that young boys would grow up following. And I don't think we do that enough in Canada at all.
Well, my organizers and I, we thank you for this interview, and we admire you and Leah Person's courage and the way that you are advocating for Rithez and like preserving her legacy. And we are here in solidarity with you as your allies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.